Okay, thank you, Eric. And as Eric mentioned, sort of at the opposite end of the spectrum from Silvercrest and cash flow positive, Precipitate is an early stage exploration company, but also, as Eric mentioned, we believe that the catalyst in this market can come from discovery, and so that's really what we're focused on, is prospective ground in favorable jurisdictions. There's the forward-looking statement. If there's one slide you remember when you go home today, I hope this is not it. Quick summary on the company. We're active in advancing some highly prospective ground in the Dominican Republic. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the presentation. And just about 10 days ago, we acquired a project in northeastern Sonora State in Mexico, and so we'll finish up with some of that. In short, as I mentioned, we like to be in jurisdictions where there's known mineral endowment. We like to be where there's year-round access and good infrastructure, and of course, reasonable or favorable mining laws and policies. Quick overview on the company. This is a new company. We just listed May of last year, doing an IPO at 40 cents. As Eric mentioned, Eric and his late brother Dave were sort of instrumental in the founding of the company, along with Scott Gibson, who runs Kitco Gibson Capital. They set out then to build a team with a management team and a board of directors, and have sort of set the company going forward based on that. As everybody here, I think will recognize, and Eric sort of touched on this in his talk, we believe that especially in the early stage of a company, in this high-risk business, people are really sort of quintessential to a company's success. We think we've got one of the best teams in the business. On the board level, we've got Adrian Fleming, who is our chairman. Adrian, some of you may know, was responsible for the discovery of the white gold deposit in the Yukon for Underworld. That company was bought out by Kinross. Gary Freeman, who ran Pediment for a number of years, operating in Mexico until that merged with Argonaut at a value of about $130 million, about a year and a half ago. Quentin Henning is a PhD geologist, an economic geologist. He spent a lot of time working with Newmont. He ran Evolving Gold with their operations in Wyoming and in Nevada for a number of years. He does a lot of work with Brent Cook's Exploration Insights and is now running a company called Nova Resources. Daryl Carty also was a founder of Underworld. Myself, I've been focused on the IR and finance business for about 20 years. I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of different groups who have identified good projects and advanced those to a point where mid-tier majors have acquired them. The last company I was involved with along those lines was a company called SilverQuest that was bought by New Gold last year for about $130 million. Structure, again, this is a new company, so we're fortunate to have a very tight share structure with just 25 million shares out, 27 million shares fully diluted. You can read this stuff as quick as I can talk about it, but I think the key points for me here down at the bottom, we've got about 50% of that share issuance owned by founders and insiders. So it's a very tight float. There's about 8 to 10 million shares tradable at any given time. So that keeps our structure quite tight. We don't trade a lot, but as you're building a company and advancing the fundamentals, you don't want to be eating through paper. I think it also gives us the potential that if we do get some positive results and start to move the projects forward, as Eric mentioned again in his talk, it can be more than a liquidity event. With nice tight structure, you might actually start to see some actual forward movement on news rather than just a liquidity event. Our cash position is about $1.2 million. This is a look at our assets in the Dominican Republic. I've sort of highlighted a few notable operations or projects that are in country there. First of all, Barrick and Gold Corp up here with their Pueblo Viejo project. That's about a 20 million ounce gold and a 100 million ounce silver deposit. It's about a $4.5 billion infrastructure to build that project, and it just got into production last month in January. Over on the west here, you'll see Gold Quest has been a very notable story in the last, call it 18 months, 12 months, something like that. Gold Quest had a real run last year from about 7 cents to about $2 based on drill success that they had at their Romero discovery, where they were reporting over 200 meters of 8 grams and 1.5% copper. So a real bona fide success in an otherwise very difficult market last year. And so the projects that we'll talk about in this presentation are our Hato Nuevo and Wanda Herrera projects, which are located adjacent to Gold Quest ground in that Tireo Gold Trend. So this is a closer look at that region of the country, and there are, as you can see, a number of projects along this Tireo Gold Trend, this contact geological structure that cuts through across the border into Haiti. But as you can see, there are a number of showings and deposits that have been identified here in recent years. And our ground is located just at the south end of that gold trend. adjacent to Gold Quest ground there. A closer look at Gold Quest is here in purple, and the Precipitate ground is here in yellow. This dashed line that cuts through these claims is really the point of reference that you want to look at. This is where the volcanics meet the limestones, and it's really that contact area or the north fringe of that contact area there, where most of the showings have been identified in this region. So when we acquired this ground, we really looked to see where along this contact we could identify prospective ground within our concessions. And you can see here, last winter, basically from October through to December, we ran sampling and mapping programs. We sent a crew down to sample along that contact. And in January of this year, we put out the first batch of results from that initial work program. And 2 showings were identified through that work. First of all, here at Melcor, we put out numbers where we were getting up to 6.5 grams gold, 4 grams gold at surface and in grab samples. Subsequent to that, we announced the number of samples returned from our Ginger Ridge showing here, where we were getting up to 11.8 grams per ton gold and over 100 grams per ton silver. So these 2 showings have emerged as highly prospective targets. We've remobilized crews back down to site. They're there now for a more detailed program of sampling and mapping over those 2 main showings. And so that's really going to be the focus of work here over the course of the next several months. We'll get these results from the work that we're doing now. We expect those to come out in the next 4 to 6 weeks at the latest. We should have some numbers back from the lab. And that's really going to be a telling point for us as to whether or not these showings warrant further follow-up, which would likely include trenching, IP. IP, or induced polarization, has been a real successful tool for some of our neighbors in this region, Gold Quest, Unigold. It's really been the drill target delineating tool of choice in the region. And so if we can advance these 2 showings to a point where we can run some IP lines over these areas and see whether or not we can get some drill targets delineated from that, I think that's going to be a real catalyst for us going forward. And I would expect success contingent. We could be at a drill stage here by late summer, at the latest perhaps early fall, something like that. So that's our plan there as it relates to those 2 concessions. So here is just another summary of what I've just stated there. If we can get this to a drill stage by later this year, we expect to have some follow-up results from the sampling and mapping, and we'll advance things forward from there. As I mentioned, just about 10 days ago, we announced a new acquisition in Mexico. I think, as prospective as our ground in the Dominican is, and we're really quite focused on advancing those to a drill stage this year, I think we're also quite aware of the fact that the odds in this business are always working against you. Discoveries are hard to come by. And so, as a small company, we wanted to make sure that we weren't a one-trick pony. And so we felt it was important to identify new assets and ideally something more advanced. I think with this acquisition of the Cecilia project that we've picked up in Sonora, we've accomplished that. This is a project that is located in a very prolific district. Mexico is of course a country where there's been phenomenal exploration and production and operation success in the last number of years. Sonora has been at the forefront of that. Good access, infrastructure, all that kind of thing. There are a number of operating mines within about 20, 30 kilometers of site, so we know this is in the right jurisdiction. Very favorable terms. We've picked this up under terms that are really only $400,000 over 2.5 years, along with some stock, about 500,000 shares of Precipitate. And what's really nice about this is under the option terms, we've also got a 4-month due diligence period. So before we make any payment to the vendor, we've got 4 months to go through all the data, go down to site, full access to this, and to test it before we commit. Part of what attracted us here is there's a main showing in the central portion of the project area where there's been prior work, historical work. And you can see here in green, these are chip samples and trenching. And you can see here there's over 100 meters of 0.96 up in this area. A significant drill hole that was reported by the Mexican government in the 80s, where they reported 180 meters of 1.2 grams per ton and 20 grams per ton silver. Another 100-meter interval here of 0.7 gold. So there's certainly some substantial previous work. These red lines here are quartz veining all throughout the project area. And there's a number of old workings. So we know there's something going on here, and part of our work will be to go in and try to confirm and validate some of what's gone on this region of the project previously. But on a bigger picture, you can see that all of that old work has been contained within this relatively small portion of the project area in an area called Cerro Magallanes. And so our view will be to test some of these additional geochemical anomaly targets outside of that area, and as well look at going and walking out throughout the entire project area to see whether or not there's some additional showings that we can test and bring to a drill stage or an exploration stage in the coming months. So looking at a quick summary of the company's work programs and catalysts going forward here. As it relates to Mexico, we're in the midst of this 4-month due diligence period where we'll be doing our evaluation of the project. I don't have much doubt that we'll continue on with that, but it's nice to have that cushion before we have to write a check. At the end of May, we'll be in a position to elect to proceed or not on that asset. And I think with that 4 months behind us, we'll be in a position to establish a very sound first phase exploration program that will start from May and into the summer. All going well, I'd like to see that project at a drill stage, success contingent, of course, by, again, late summer, maybe early fall. As for the Dominican, again, we'll be looking to continue on with our sampling programs and get that project to a drill stage, again, late summer, early fall, and I think that's really the real acid test for any of these projects is to go in and drill test them. With that, I'm out of time. Thank you very much.